You know, it took me 10 years to learn what I'm about to share with you. 10 years. And let me tell you something, those weren't easy years. They were filled with mistakes, setbacks, conversations that changed everything, and moments where I had to look myself straight in the mirror and admit some hard truths. But here's what I've learned. Wisdom always comes with a price tag. You either pay it in time, you pay it in mistakes, or if you're lucky, you pay it through someone else's experience. I paid mine the hard way, and maybe by sharing these lessons with you today, I can save you a few years of struggle. When I was a young man working on my father's farm in Idaho, I thought I had life figured out. I really did. I'd watch my father work from sun up to sundown, and I thought to myself, that's what you do. You work hard, you do your job, and everything works out. Simple formula, right? Work equals reward. But let me tell you what happened when I took that philosophy out into the real world. At 25 years old, I found myself broke. Not just a little behind on bills, I mean really broke. I had pennies in my pocket, more dreams than dollars, and a growing family to support. And standing there one evening, looking at my bank statement, I had to ask myself a question that would change everything. How did I get here? See, I'd been working. Oh, I'd been working hard, putting in my hours, doing what I was told, showing up on time. I was doing everything I thought I was supposed to do. But here's the thing, and this is crucial. I was confusing activity with productivity. I was confusing motion with progress. I was doing a lot of things, but I wasn't doing the right things. And there's a massive difference between those two ideas that most people never figure out. The truth is, I didn't have a money problem. I had a philosophy problem. And that's the first major lesson that took me years to understand. Your economic philosophy determines your economic reality. Not your job, not your boss, not the economy, not the government. Your philosophy, the way you think about money, about value, about work, that's what creates your financial situation. And until you change that philosophy, nothing else changes. Let me explain what I mean by economic philosophy, because this is where most people get stuck their entire lives. Your economic philosophy is the set of beliefs and attitudes you carry about how wealth is created, how money works, and what you're worth in the marketplace. Most people inherit their economic philosophy from their parents, their neighborhood, their friends, or from the general culture around them. And here's the problem. Most of those philosophies don't work. They keep you stuck exactly where you are. I learned this lesson the hard way when I met a man named Earl Schoaf. I was invited to a lecture, and honestly, I almost didn't go. But something told me to show up that night, and thank God I did, because that one evening changed the entire trajectory of my life. Mr. Schoaf took an interest in me. I still don't know why. But after his talk, we had a conversation that I'll never forget. He looked at me and asked, "Jim, how much money are you making?" I told him. He said, "Is that all?" Now, that stung a little, but then he said something that hit me like a lightning bolt. I suggest that the problem isn't the economy. The problem isn't your job. The problem isn't what they're paying. The problem is you. At first, I wanted to argue. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to list all the reasons why my situation wasn't my fault. But something stopped me, and instead I just listened. And here's what he told me. "Jim, if you want to have more, you have to become more. Income rarely exceeds personal development. You can't have more than you've got if you don't become more than you are." Now, let me tell you why that statement is so powerful. Most people are looking for the better opportunity, the better job, the better territory, the better set of circumstances. They're always looking outside themselves for the solution to their financial problems. But here's what Mr. Schoaf taught me. The real problem is always internal, not external. You don't need a better economy. You need to become a better you. You don't need a better job. You need to become more valuable to the marketplace. The focus has to shift from what you're getting to what you're becoming. He said to me, "Profits are better than wages." And I said, "What do you mean?" He explained, wages make you a living. Profits make you a fortune. But here's the key. you'll never have access to real profits, to real wealth, until you develop the philosophy of an entrepreneur instead of an employee. See, an employee works for wages and thinks about how many hours they put in. An entrepreneur works for profits and thinks about how much value they create. That's a completely different mindset. That's a completely different philosophy. This is where most people get stuck for their entire lives. They trade time for money and wonder why they never get ahead. They work hard. I'm not saying they don't work hard, but they work hard at the wrong things with the wrong philosophy. They think if I just work a few more hours, if I just get that raise, if I just get that promotion, then everything will be fine. But here's the reality. You can't work enough hours at the wrong philosophy to ever achieve financial independence. It's impossible. You're climbing the ladder, but it's leaning against the wrong wall. So I had to ask myself some tough questions. Questions like, where is my current philosophy taking me? If I keep thinking the way I'm thinking, if I keep doing what I'm doing, where will I be in 5 years, in 10 years? And let me tell you, when I honestly looked at that trajectory, I didn't like what I saw. I saw myself at 50 years old, still struggling, still broke, still blaming circumstances. And that scared me more than anything else. That picture of my future based on my current philosophy, that's what motivated me to change. But here's what I discovered. Changing your philosophy isn't easy because first you have to admit that your current philosophy is wrong. You have to admit that the way you've been thinking about money, about work, about value, it's been faulty. And that takes humility. That takes courage. Most people would rather defend their current philosophy, even if it's not working, than admit they need to change. They'd rather be right than be rich. They'd rather protect their ego than transform their economy. The brutal truth is this. If you're not doing well economically, it's not the government's fault. It's not your employer's fault. It's not the economy's fault. It's not bad luck. It's your philosophy. And until you own that, until you take full responsibility for that, nothing changes. You'll keep experiencing the same results year after year after year because you're operating from the same philosophy. Now, I know some people hear that and they get defensive. They say, but Jim, you don't understand my situation. You don't know what I'm dealing with. You don't know my background, my education, my circumstances. And you're right. I don't know your specific situation. But here's what I do know. I've met people who started with nothing and built empires. I've met people who grew up poor and became wealthy. I've met people with limited education who became incredibly successful. And I've also met people with every advantage who stayed broke. The difference wasn't their circumstances. The difference was their philosophy. Let me give you some practical steps to start redesigning your economic thinking starting today. Because philosophy without application is just intellectual entertainment. First, you've got to evaluate where your current beliefs about money came from. Did you get them from your parents? From your neighborhood? From friends who are also struggling? Because if you got your economic philosophy from broke people, you've got a broke philosophy. That's not being mean, that's being honest. You can't learn how to be wealthy from people who've never done it. Second, you've got to start exposing yourself to new philosophies, new ideas, new ways of thinking about wealth creation. Read books written by people who've actually built wealth, study their philosophies, listen to their stories, attend seminars, find mentors. You've got to deliberately reprogram your mind with a new economic philosophy because the old one isn't working. Third, and this is critical, you've got to understand that working harder at your job won't make you wealthy. It might get you a raise. It might get you a promotion, but it won't make you wealthy. Why? Because you're still trading time for money, and time is limited. There are only 24 hours in a day. You can't work enough hours to get rich, but you can become valuable enough, develop enough skills, create enough value that wealth becomes inevitable. Here's what Mr. Schoaf taught me about value. The marketplace pays for value, not time. If you can solve bigger problems, if you can serve more people, If you can create more value, the marketplace will reward you. But most people never increase their value. They just keep showing up, doing the same things they did last year, wondering why their income doesn't change. Your income is directly tied to your value in the marketplace. If you want more income, become more valuable. And let me tell you something else about philosophy that took me years to understand. Small changes in philosophy can create massive changes in results. You don't have to overhaul everything overnight. Sometimes just adjusting one belief, one attitude, one approach can start a chain reaction that transforms everything. For me, it was accepting the idea that I was responsible for my own economy. That one shift in philosophy changed everything because suddenly I stopped being a victim and became a creator. I stopped waiting for things to get better and started making things better. The marketplace doesn't care about your excuses, doesn't care about your complaints, it doesn't care about what's fair or unfair. The marketplace only cares about one thing. Can you deliver value? Can you solve problems? Can you serve? And if you can, it will reward you. If you can't, it won't. It's that simple, and it's that harsh. But it's also that fair because it means anyone, and I mean anyone, can change their economic reality by changing their philosophy and increasing their value. Now, here's what changed my whole life, and this is the second lesson that took me years to figure out. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Let me say that again, because most people miss this. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. See, your job will make you a living, but working on yourself will make you a fortune. And the difference between those two things is the difference between surviving and thriving. When Mr. Shove told me this, I didn't fully understand it at first. I thought, what does that mean? I'm already working hard at my job, but he explained it this way. Jim, if you work hard on your job, you'll make a living, but if you work hard on yourself, you can make a fortune. Your income can only grow to the extent that you do. And that hit me like a ton of bricks because I realized I'd been focusing all my energy on the wrong thing. I was trying to get more out of my job when I should have been trying to get more out of myself. Here's the reality. You can't earn more than you're worth. Oh, you might for a little while. You might get lucky, get overpaid for a season, but eventually the marketplace figures out your true value and your income adjusts accordingly. That's why some people get big raises or big opportunities and then lose it all. They weren't ready for it. They hadn't developed themselves to match that level of income. Your outer world will always reflect your inner development. Always. So I made a decision that changed everything. I decided to spend the next 5 years reading everything I could get my hands on, learning everything I could learn, and transforming myself from the inside out. I got a library card, best investment I ever made, and I started reading books by successful people, books on philosophy, books on business, books on personal development. I became a student again, but this time I was studying subjects that actually mattered for my life and my future. Let me tell you something about a library card. It's worth more than most business degrees. Why? Because in that library, you have access to thousands of years of accumulated wisdom. You have access to the thoughts of the greatest minds who ever lived. You have access to ideas that can transform your life. And it's free. Absolutely free. But here's the sad part. Most people won't even walk into a library. They won't read one book a year. They won't invest 1 hour a week in their own development, and then they wonder why their life doesn't change. Here's the mathematics of self-improvement, and this is powerful. If you read just 5 pages a day, that's it, just 5 pages. That's a book every couple of weeks. That's 25 books a year. In 5 years, you'll have read over 100 books. Now, let me ask you, if you read 100 books on success, on business, on personal development, do you think you'd be the same person? Of course not. You'd be transformed. Your thinking would be different, your philosophy would be different, your skills would be different, and because all of that would be different, your results would be different. But here's the problem. It's easy to read 5 pages a day, but it's also easy not to. It's easy to work on yourself for an hour, but it's also easy to skip it. And that's why most people don't do it. Not because it's hard, but because it's easy not to do. The things that are easy to do are also easy not to do, and that's where people make the critical error. This is what I call the slight edge principle, and it's one of the most profound concepts I've ever learned. Small daily disciplines, repeated with consistency over time, create massive results. But here's the flip side. Small errors in judgment, repeated every day, lead to disaster. The difference between success and failure isn't dramatic. It's not some huge decision you make one day. It's the small choices you make every single day that nobody sees, nobody applauds, nobody monitors except you. Think about it this way. If you eat a hamburger and French fries for lunch today, will it destroy your health? Of course not. Will eating a salad instead transform your body? No, not immediately. The difference is negligible in the moment. But here's what happens. If you eat that hamburger and fries every day for 5 years, now you've got a problem. If you eat the salad every day for 5 years, now you've got health. Same principle applies to everything in life. Reading for 30 minutes won't make you successful. But reading for 30 minutes every day for 5 years, that changes everything. I spent 5 years completely transforming myself through this principle. Every single day, I was reading, learning, practicing new skills, working on my communication, studying successful people, refining my philosophy. And let me tell you what happened at first. Nothing. For months, I wasn't making any more money. My circumstances hadn't changed. From the outside, it looked like nothing was happening. But on the inside, everything was changing. I was changing. And that's what matters, because success is something you attract by the person you become, not something you pursue. See, most people want the results without the transformation. They want the income without the personal development. They want the harvest without planting the seeds and doing the cultivation. But life doesn't work that way. You can't just show up in fall and expect to harvest what you never planted in spring. And that brings me to the third major lesson that took me a decade to really understand. Life operates in seasons and cycles, and you've got to learn to work with them, not against them. When I was going through my toughest times, when I'd invested all this time in personal development but wasn't seeing the results yet, I wanted to quit. I really did. I thought, what's the point? I'm reading all these books, I'm working on myself, but nothing's changing. But then I learned something that saved me. Winter is not forever. Spring is coming. But you've got to prepare for it. You've got to be ready when it arrives. Nature has 4 seasons, and so does life. There's a time to plant, a time to cultivate, a time to harvest, and a time to rest and reflect. The problem is that most people don't understand which season they're in, so they're doing the wrong activities at the wrong time. They're trying to harvest in springtime and wondering why there's no crop. They're trying to plant in winter and getting frustrated. You've got to learn to read the seasons of your life and adjust your strategy accordingly. Let me break this down for you because this is critical. Spring is the season of opportunity and new beginnings. This is when you plant. This is when you start new projects, learn new skills, make new connections, set new goals. But here's what you've got to understand about spring. You can't see the results yet. You're putting seeds in the ground. You're investing time, energy, and money into things that haven't produced anything yet. And this is where most people quit. They plant for a week or a month, don't see immediate results, and give up. But spring requires faith. It requires trust in the process. You've got to believe that if you plant good seeds and take care of them, harvest is coming. Then comes summer, the season of cultivation and protection. This is where most people fail because summer is hard work. The sun is hot, the days are long, and you're out there every single day watering, weeding, protecting your crop from pests and problems. Summer is not the time to take it easy. Summer's not vacation time, even though that's when most people want to rest. Summer's when you've got to nurture what you planted in spring. You've got to protect it, feed it, and stay committed to the process even when you're tired, even when it's difficult, even when you'd rather be doing something else. I remember summers on the farm when I was young. My father would be out there every single day taking care of those crops. He didn't skip days. He didn't say, well, I worked hard yesterday, so I'll take today off. Why? Because he understood that neglect during summer means disaster in fall. If you don't take care of your crops in summer, there won't be a harvest. And the same is true in life. If you neglect your business, your health, your relationships, your skills during the cultivation season, you won't have anything to harvest later. Then comes fall, the season of harvest and responsibility. This is when all your work pays off. This is when you reap what you've sown. But here's what you've got to understand. You can't harvest what you didn't plant. You can't reap in areas where you didn't sow. Fall is not the time to feel sorry for yourself if there's no crop. Fall reveals the truth about what you did in spring and summer. It's the great moment of accountability. And when fall comes, and it comes for everyone, you'd better be ready to harvest everything you've worked for, because the window doesn't stay open forever. I'll never forget my first big harvest season after those 5 years of intense personal development. Opportunities started showing up everywhere. People started calling me. Doors started opening that had been closed before. My income multiplied. But here's what most people didn't see. They saw the harvest, but they didn't see the 5 years of planting and cultivating that came before it. They thought I got lucky. They thought I was an overnight success. But there's no such thing as overnight success. There's only years of preparation meeting the right season. And then comes winter, the season that nobody wants, but everybody needs. Winter is the time of rest, reflection, and renewal. It's when things die back, when growth stops, when you're forced to live off what you stored from the harvest. And let me tell you something about winter. It will come. It doesn't matter how successful you are. It doesn't matter how well prepared you think you are. Winter comes for everyone. The economy will turn down. You'll face setbacks. You'll experience losses. Things won't always go your way. But here's what I learned about winter. It's not a curse, it's a classroom. Winter teaches you lessons that no other season can teach. Winter shows you what you're made of. Winter reveals your character. And if you approach winter with the right attitude, you come out of it stronger, wiser, and better prepared for the next spring. The key is not to curse the winter. Don't complain about it. Don't wish it wasn't there. Instead, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I grow through this? How can I prepare for the next season? Here's the philosophical truth that changed my life. You can't change the seasons, but you can change yourself. Winter will come whether you like it or not. Summer will be hot and demanding. Spring will require faith. Fall will demand that you harvest. These are constants. But what's not constant is how you respond to them. What's not constant is how you prepare. What's not constant is the person you become through each season. Most people spend their whole lives wishing things were easier. They wish the winter wasn't so cold. They wish the summer wasn't so demanding. They wish spring would produce faster results. They wish fall would last longer. But wishing doesn't change anything. Here's what does. Wishing you were better. Wishing you were smarter. Wishing you were more skilled, more disciplined, more prepared. Work on yourself, not on wishing the seasons were different. Now let me share with you the fourth lesson, and this one was painful to learn. This one cost me some relationships that I thought would last forever. But it's one of the most important truths I've ever discovered. You become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Your associations will determine your direction in life more than your education, more than your motivation, more than anything else. Show me your friends, and I'll show you your future. When Mr. Show first told me this, I pushed back. I said, that's not fair. I've got friends who've been with me since childhood. Are you telling me I need to abandon them? And he said something I'll never forget. Jim, I'm not telling you to abandon anyone. I'm telling you to be selective about who influences you. There's a difference between being friendly and being close friend. You can be cordial to everyone, but you've got to guard your inner circle like you guard your bank account, because it's just as valuable. Here's what I discovered. Association is more powerful than motivation or education alone. You can get all motivated at a seminar, you can read all the books in the world, but if you go home and spend your evenings with people who don't share your values, who mock your ambitions, who pull you down to their level, you won't make it. The pull of association is too strong. It's like trying to soar with eagles when you're surrounded by turkeys. Eventually, you'll start gobbling instead of soaring. Let me break down the 3 types of people in your life, because understanding this will change everything for you. First, there are people who subtract from your life. These are the complainers, the critics, the energy vampires who drain you every time you're around them. They don't believe in your dreams. They don't support your growth. They're always negative, always finding problems, always pulling you toward mediocrity. And here's the hard truth. If you keep these people close, they will destroy your future, not because they're bad people necessarily, but because their influence is toxic to your growth. Then there are people who add to your life. These are good people. They're supportive. They're encouraging. They want you to succeed. They celebrate your victories. These people are valuable, and you should maintain these relationships. But here's what you need to understand. Adding isn't enough if you want to create something extraordinary. Addition is good, but multiplication is better. And that brings me to the 3rd type of person. The 3rd type are the people who multiply your life. These are the mentors, the successful individuals who've been where you want to go, the people who challenge you, push you, expand your thinking, and accelerate your growth. These people don't just support you, they transform you. They don't just encourage you, they elevate you. And if you want to create exceptional results in your life, you need multipliers in your inner circle. I had to make some very difficult decisions when I learned this principle. I had friends I'd known for years who were holding me back. We'd get together, and all we'd do is complain about our bosses, complain about money, complain about the government. We'd sit around making excuses for why we couldn't succeed. And I realized that every time I spent an evening with these people, I came away feeling worse, not better. I came away more negative, not more positive. I came away with my ambitions dampened, not ignited. So I made a choice. I started something I call limited association. I didn't cut these people out of my life completely, but I limited the time I spent with them. I was still friendly. I was still kind, but I stopped spending hours and hours in their company. Instead, I started seeking out people who were more successful than me, people who were going somewhere, people who had what I wanted. And let me tell you, that wasn't easy. Successful people don't just let anyone into their circle. You've got to bring value. You've got to be worth their time. Here's what I did. I started reading books by successful people so I could speak their language. I started learning about their interests so I could contribute to conversations. I started offering to help them in any way I could, not to manipulate them, but to genuinely add value to their lives. And slowly, over time, some of these people became my friends, my mentors, my multipliers. And my life changed dramatically because of it. But here's what most people don't understand about association. It's not about using people. It's not about climbing some social ladder. It's about recognizing that you're influenced by the people around you, whether you realize it or not. Their attitudes become your attitudes. Their standards become your standards. Their income level tends to become your income level. It's not magic. It's just how human psychology works. We conform to the norms of our peer group. Think about it this way. If you hang around 5 millionaires, eventually you'll become the 6th. Not because they'll give you money, but because you'll start thinking like they think, acting like they act, making decisions like they make decisions. You'll absorb their philosophy, their work ethic, their standards. On the flip side, if you hang around 5 broke people who complain all the time, guess what happens to you? You become the 6th broke complainer. It's inevitable. Now I want to talk about what I call expanded association. This is where you deliberately seek out people who can teach you, people who can challenge you, people who can show you what's possible. You join organizations where successful people gather. You attend seminars and conferences. You read biographies of great men and women. You listen to educational programs. You're expanding your circle of influence beyond your immediate geographic location. I spent years studying successful people through their books and recordings. I couldn't always meet them in person, but I could learn from them through their ideas. And here's something powerful. When you spend an hour reading a book by a successful person, you're getting the best hour of their thinking. You're getting the distilled wisdom of their entire life experience. That's expanded association. You're allowing people you've never met to influence your thinking and shape your future. Then there's what I call disassociation. Sometimes you have to completely walk away from certain relationships because they're too toxic, too destructive, too damaging to your future. This is the hardest part, but sometimes it's necessary. If someone is consistently negative, consistently pulling you down, consistently undermining your goals and dreams, you might have to love them from a distance. You can't let their dysfunction become your disaster. I had to do this with a few people in my life, and it was painful. These were people I cared about, but I realized that if I stayed closely connected to them, they would drag me back down to where I used to be. They didn't want me to change because my change made them uncomfortable. My growth highlighted their stagnation. So they would consciously or unconsciously try to pull me back down to their level. And I had to make a choice: their approval or my future. I chose my future. Here's what I learned about building your circle of influence. Successful people are attracted to successful people. They're attracted to people who are growing, learning, ambitious, disciplined, and going somewhere. If you want access to successful people, you've got to become the kind of person they want to be around. You've got to bring something to the table. You've got to have value to offer. Nobody wants to carry dead weight. So I made myself valuable. I became a student of success. I developed skills. I read extensively so I could contribute to conversations. I learned to listen more than I taught. I looked for ways to serve, to help, to add value to people's lives. And as I became more valuable people were attracted into my circle. It's a law. Like attracts like. If you want to attract better people into your life, become a better person yourself. Let me give you some practical steps for evaluating and improving your associations. First, write down the names of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Be honest. Then, next to each name, write down their income level, their attitude toward life, their goals, their habits. Now look at that list and ask yourself, is this where I want to go? Because that list is a preview of your future. If you don't like what you see, you need to make some changes. Second, start deliberately seeking out people who are where you want to be. Join professional organizations. Attend conferences and seminars. Volunteer for projects where you'll meet high-caliber people. Read books and listen to programs by successful individuals. You've got to put yourself in environments where you'll be exposed to better thinking, higher standards, and greater possibilities. Third, create what I call a personal board of directors. These are 3 to 5 people who are ahead of you in life, who've accomplished what you want to accomplish, and who are willing to give you guidance and feedback. These don't have to be formal relationships. They can be authors whose books you read regularly, speakers whose programs you study, or actual mentors you meet with occasionally. But you need these multipliers in your life if you want to accelerate your growth. And finally, have the courage to limit or eliminate toxic associations. This doesn't mean you become arrogant or think you're better than other people. It means you're serious about your future. It means you're protecting your mindset, your ambitions, and your potential. You can't soar with eagles if you're scratching with turkeys. You've got to make some tough choices about who gets access to your time, your energy, and your mind.